Good afternoon, evening, Town of Richmond meeting of Water and Sewer Commission, March 18th, 2024. Welcome. Any public comments? Public comments. Second up, any additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda? Yes, sir. No? Okay, moving right along, approval of minutes, purchase orders and warrants. We'll start with the minutes.
Morgan, I move we approve the minutes of March 4th.
Okay, do I have a second?
This is David, I'll second.
Okay, discussion, any discussion?
I reviewed them. I didn't see anything I didn't agree with.
Okay. With that, calling for a vote on approval, accepting the minutes from March the 5th. Is that right?
Bard, aye. Jay, aye.
Aaron, I.
David, I.
Morgan, aye. Motion passed. It was actually minutes for March the 4th. Next up, purchase orders, warrants.
Purchase order.
Yep, I'll put them on the screen. That's helpful. Load.
Yeah, so there's a purchase order for, we'll start with purchase order 4774. Is that the only purchase order? Or is
Oh,
it
no, there's two today.
two? And purchase order 4865. 4865 in the amount of 12,021 and 12 cents, and purchase order.
So this is for the break right outside the plant, right? The one that they had such trouble finding it first.
Correct. This is the Waterline break. Yep.
There it is. Yeah, 15,390 to repair the water break. And then the other
Let's do one at a time, maybe.
was,
Morgan, I
Okay.
move that we approve purchase order 4774 and an amount not to exceed $15,390.16.
of a second.
This is David, I'll second.
Okay, discussion. No discussion, calling for a vote to approve purchase order number 4774 for 15,390 and 16 cents.
Jay, aye.
Aaron, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
Morgan, aye. Motion passed. Purchase order number 4865. I have a motion to accept this purchase order for 12,021 and 12 cents.
And this is, it says East Main Street Planning. Can you remind me what are we planning on East Main Street?
So I think
Revolving loan.
this is actually a loan from a project that's already had.
Oh, okay.
So
I
I
didn't
think-
ring a bell.
Yeah, I think it was East Main Street Waterline.
I move, Morgan, I move we accept purchase order 4865 and an amount not to exceed $12,021.12.
Morgan, this is David, I'll second.
Okay, discussion. The discussion, calling for a vote to approve purchase order 4865.
Jay, aye.
Aaron, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
Morgan, aye. Motion passed. All right. Now, let's see, warrants, warrant report, $33,805.10 to the Water General supporting document package. Number of items here need to be paid. Do I have a motion to approve warrant March 18th, 2010, electronic transfer, I'm sorry. warrant.
Yeah, you usually just do them all in one motion,
Okay.
unless there's specific questions or concerns.
Okay,
Morgan, I move we approve the warrants as presented.
This is Aaron, I'll second that motion.
okay, discussion? Any discussion, calling for a vote to approve warrants.
Jay, aye.
Aaron, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
Morgan, aye. Warrants passed. Okay. Next up, we are gonna talk about budgets. View of draft fiscal year 2025. And, we will open the discussion up and let Josh and Steve lead.
Sure. So we've got like an hour for this, so I could go through, kind of give a general overview of some of the changes. I think if anybody wants to ask questions as we go, we've got a good amount of time for discussion, so I'm not, if you want to just jump in with questions, I say go for it. Couple notes, I did not include a draft rate sheet. I sort of ran out of time at the end of last week. I sat down to do one this morning and I realized that we need to have the total water and sewer usage to the end of this month to calculate those rates. But I did create a draft rate sheet if you want to review it tonight. I just kept the water usage the same as the previous year. So it gives us some idea. But those numbers will change once we close out March. So probably by the second meeting in April, we'll have an actual look at the rates. But if there's interest tonight, I can pull that up. We can take a look at just to sort of see where rates would be. Some changes that we made that affect both water and wastewater budgets. So wages are calculated based on the current staff plus budgeting for hiring an operator and training to get us up to 4 staff members. The pay grid is budgeted to increase by 3%, which is the same budget that we use for the select board and for general fund. And staff are budgeted to increase by 1 step on the pay grid. We can look at that too a little closer. We're closer to when we do that. That usually goes up in May or June. And then the select board budgeting process, we're making that call in like November. So we're a little closer, so we could probably look at that actual increase and refine that a bit for the budget based on what it might actually be in the spring. Health insurance is set to increase for current use for all employees. We based a vacant position on a 2-person plan. We based all those rates on the current calendar year 24 rates. Passive insurance is budgeted at 2024 calendar year rates. And we added a line for building repair and water. Oh, wait a minute, that shouldn't be in there. That's we'll deal with that one later.
Yeah.
So those are sort of overview big picture items that have changed in both. So walking through water sort of from top down, on the interest side and revenue, we increased that based on seeing higher interest rates and higher year-to-date actuals and interest on our checking account for both water and wastewater. So we think an $11,000 projection is a little bit better than the $6,000 that we budgeted for. User receipts, basically the way we calculate this is once we calculate all of the items here, whatever's left over in the budget is where we're at for user receipts. That has to make up the balance of it. So that's how we sort of back into how much we're going to raise from users is once we determine all non-user receipts. Steve did a really nice job in this budget going through and really taking a fine look at a lot of the descriptions of the budget lines. So we've added a few and we've changed a few. Some of them we're trying to be more consistent between water and wastewater. So we're using the same wording for similar type budget items. And then others, we just tried to clarify a little bit more. So I'll walk through some of those as I kind of go through the top. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, just, we're really trying to be more transparent.
Yeah.
In some of the descriptions, it was misleading in what we were actually paying with that line.
Yeah.
So we tried to, I tried to give them more accurate headings.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this one used to be staff training, education, and licensing, and we changed it to training, education, licenses, and certifications. Next we had, this used to be trash removal, we changed it to rubbish removal. I think that was mostly to match up with wastewater. We're actually in the water budget here, if I didn't say that. Supplies, we changed to supplies, consumables, because we looked at, there's a number of different supplies you can buy. These are things like rags, cleaning supplies, sort of the soft supplies that you would use and kind of go through. Water contracted has always been used for water testing. Water contracted can mean a number of things, but this is specifically for testing, so we changed it to water testing. We added the line for grounds maintenance. We've got a contract with the town that we have a mower who comes in and takes care of the parks. We're going to add that to water wastewater to take some of the duties off of water wastewater staff for some weekly mowing. building repairs, we added a line for that because we had a line for things like facility repairs, but you know, if a door breaks or steps break, we needed something for building repairs.
We ran into the issue where the heaters in both of the water buildings needed repair. And the only line item to put them under was heat. Which really isn't accurate, you know, it was a repair to the building, so I felt that it was necessary to put building repair. Specifically, like, you know, the heaters, the lighting, the doors,
Ventilation.
Ventilation.
yeah, good.
Depending on what the
But
ventilation
things
is.
Okay.
that deal with the buildings, not the system actually.
Okay.
There was no, in water specifically, there was nothing there. It would be a line in, the wastewater plant that would now be used if our stairs break again.
Oh,
Mhm.
we could just get some pallets.
Yeah, we could, but no,
Pallet
I don't think so.
Let's not
Oh.
do that.
Then we changed meters to meter replacements, because this has been if we need to buy individual meters to help replace. We also put that down to 0, knowing that we're replacing a good majority of the meters, and we also have 10 meters on the shelf that we can use as backups if some of the older meters that we're not replacing fail.
And does that go into capital costs? Meter
The
replacement?
replacement? No, because these are individual water meters and they're only they're like less than $1,000 per meter, I think, Steve. So these
Yeah,
are for the
I don't-
ones like if your meter goes, we'll come over and put a new meter in.
Okay, so like buying a replacement computer.
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, so it's sort of smaller.
Is this the time to ask our questions?
Go ahead,
as we're going?
yeah, I think
Okay.
this is a looser presentation, yeah.
My first question was, why don't we have any budget for equipment rental?
The discussion there was, the only the reason that line was used was for the mowing
The brush hog?
around the water house.
Yeah.
So the first year I worked here, when Kendall was here, we rented a mower and we did it. It took like 3 days to do it by
Yep.
hand. So last year, I went and saw our friendly highway guys, said, Pete, you got a brush hog I can borrow for a day? And it took 2 hours.
Yeah.
So it eliminated the need to rent equipment
And 3 hours.
Yeah, that little like.
and
round-
3 days worth of mowing.
Yeah.
It was done instantly. I mean,
Should we keep that on there if you ever had to rent a sump pump or
well, I think
pressure
it's,
washer or?
it's good to keep there. The discussion was right now, we would make it at 0, didn't we? Or did
Yeah, we
we?
made it at 0 because the
Yeah.
only thing you ever used it for was.
That was the only thing that I ever saw it used for. And that goes away because we borrow the highway one.
Yep.
And we are also now having mowing done by the contract with the town.
Ground maintenance.
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
And then my other question was, the asphalt repair,
Hmm.
Mhm.
just out of curiosity,
The parking lot.
is that like is that for like the holes?
It's
in
when
the
water
parking
main
lot?
breaks.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
that, okay.
We will have to use that this year because the water main break at the plant, we dug through the driveway
And so.
and we're
okay.
gonna need to repair that because there's a tremendous amount of mud getting tracked back in
Yeah.
right now.
That
And
makes sense. I just was like, that's
Yeah.
an odd, like,
Anywhere else on a town road as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Okay.
have to repair the asphalt when we're done.
okay.
And then we changed equipment purchase to equipment purchase small. I think that's because we were looking at smaller pieces rather than like an influent pump. Like,
Yeah.
this would be like a non-capital purchase. Okay, I think that kind of, maybe we take it one at a time. We did increase in water capital reserve. We added $10,000 anticipating that we're going to need to put some money into the alarm as well as into a new car and or truck in the next couple of years. So we wanted to make sure we added that. Yeah.
Okay, so you'll take that and just put it in reserve.
Yeah,
So
so-
you need to,
I think what might make sense now is to, since let's stay in water. Let's go to
Yeah.
BARD actually, and then we'll stay in water and go to unassigned funds.
You know, I haven't asked this before and I apologize. When we buy tools, where would tools and other small equipment. Is equipment purchase include tools?
Well, that was another gray area. There's not a tool budget line. And I felt right now, this year, we would if we had to, it would be under equipment purchase. Cause essentially tools or equipment. If we needed something, we could use that line.
Okay,
That's what we call it at the farm, is small tools and equipment, and like if you gotta buy an impact thing,
Yeah.
put it under there.
should we include the word tools in that line? I'm only calling the question.
No, it might not be a bad idea, Bart. I mean, we did not have a line item for tools in the past, and it is something that we are lacking a little bit at the plant.
All right, we'll make that note. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah,
Bart, did you have something else or? Nope, muted. We'll jump over to unrestricted and reserves. Let me make this a little bigger. Hide a few of these columns so that it's easier. Why is, okay, that's not great. Is it? Yep, okay. Gonna hide some of the historicals so that we don't have to sift through all those. Okay, that looks like we have a good view here. So you see we've got the year-end FY23 water unrestricted funds of $183,000. Unrestricted funds and water are essentially the unassigned equivalent in the general fund. So this is money that at the end of the year wasn't spent and wasn't committed to a capital reserve. So it wasn't committed to short-term capital, water capital, or distribution. You can see those balances at 115 for short-term, 126 for water capital, and 21,000 for distribution. So that $10,000 contribution would go to this line here in water capital. FY24 contributions budgeted a short-term of 20,000, distribution of 20,000. We've got 29,000, almost $30,000 that we spent in water capital, and that went towards the tank mixer. So our projected balances at the end of FY24, assuming we don't have any other expenses, and short term is 135, water capital of 96, distribution of $41,000. In this, as we were looking at and finalizing the purchases of the water meters, there was a motion made to purchase water meters, but there wasn't a motion made as to where we're going to pull those out of. So for now, I put those in the unrestricted funds of $103,000 for the water meters. I estimated $75,000 for installation based on one estimate that we got when we were purchasing the meters. Those RFPs are due, I think, in a week or two. So we'll have a better number there. And this is one that if the commission would like to take part out of, I think water capital could come out of that. But we also have, that does draw that our unrestricted funds down to about $5,000. Assuming there might still be some vacancy savings in water. There probably will be vacancy savings in water this year. So that'll probably be higher than 5,000, but it won't still be at 180.
So I remember last year, and I don't remember exactly, but I remember learning from people that came in the audience that we're not supposed to go over a certain percentage. Where does that fall in this budget?
Right, that's a great question. So for the select board, we've always used 15% of the operating budgets where we
That
want
was
to keep.
maybe from like the RRCP or something?
Yeah, that was really guidance from our auditors. And
Yeah.
then the select board made a motion and actually had a policy now in place that they want to keep unrestricted funds at 15%. So 15% right now of the water operating budget. Let's see, we're at, well, in FY25, it's 396. So that times
60,000, yeah, just under 60,000.
Yeah.
you guys are faster than I can type. Look at that, 59,478. So that could be a good way to approach how much do you want to take out of here versus how much you're going to take out of water capital. And hopefully we'll have a better number. We will have a better number on the installation here in the next couple of weeks. So nothing we have to decide tonight, but I think certainly by the end of the fiscal year when we're starting to pay that bill, we should know.
Okay.
So we have about 28,000 difference between after,
Oh, if you were to take the 60,000 out of there,
the 103,000 water purchase and, oh, that's 100, I'm sorry,
Sorry.
180. It's
Yeah,
170,000.
well, that's purchase and installation.
right, the purchase is about 103 and that's pretty firm. But the installation, when we did the initial purchase contracts, we did get a proposal for installation. So I looked back at that, kind of gleaned through it. I realized some of it wasn't really pertinent to what we're doing. So I tried to pull out and sort of do my best estimate. But we have an installation RFP due, I think, next week. So then we'll have some actual numbers to look at here. But that 103 that's not going anywhere. That's there. That's real. So again, we don't have to decide right now, but certainly some things to think about. We'll flip over to sewer if we're ready for that. So on the septic side, again, the way we calculate the sewer receipts is we total up the user revenue and then subtract that from the total budget and we come up with our sewer receipts. The big difference here is looking at septic receipts. Last year, we budgeted $550,000. We're on track to be, I think, pretty well below that. I should have put that into the memo. And in talking with Steve, he felt more comfortable with a $500,000 budget on that. Looking back at FY23, that's about where we were in FY23. But the thing that does do is that then takes us from about 290,000 to 352,000 in getting revenue from the sewer users. So that's about a 21% increase in what we're budgeting for sewer user receipts, which would have an equivalent effect on rates. So Steve, I don't know if you want to expand on the septic projections.
Well, one thing that I was talking with Josh is and he was under the assumption that we were taking less because we couldn't press it. We have been trying to take 50,000 gallons a day, every day since October. The press has been running good enough up until today, which we tore we have our Fournier channels here. They arrived last Friday. So they're going to be installed. We're going to install them tomorrow. So we stripped the other side that was working off the press and we're ready to go. The long and the short, what I have seen this winter months is everybody across the board has not had business as far as septic tanks to pump. They have their regular business of pump station cleanings and stuff, but their actual business has been down. The other thing is last summer we rose rates to 7.5. There are some haulers that are now going to Milton because Milton is at that same rate and they're closer. So we're losing a little bit because it makes more sense for them not to come here for 6.5 cents, what we were at, to just stop in Milton where there are 7.5 or 7.5 here. Milton has been broke down for the last 2 weeks and our numbers have been up quite a lot.
Darn the bad luck.
But we are now down. We ran the press and emptied all the tanks this weekend. Pulled the press apart on Sunday. I came in and pulled it apart. And we were able, today we took 30,000 gallons of septic. That basically filled the digester. So we now have room for another, tomorrow I can take another 40,000. But that'll be it until we get the press operating again.
How long will it take to get the press up and running?
He said a day and a half.
Oh,
Not that bad.
This is only half of the upgrade that we bought. This is the channels. It's no electrical and really no other infrastructure with it.
With
so-
the press up and running, how long will it take to get caught up?
He anticipates us to go from the 20 gallons average a minute that we're doing to 60 gallons.
Terrific.
So we should be able to catch up and it'll basically make the ability of us to run the press during the day while we're here and not have to come at night. Hopefully. But I text every day, all of the haulers. We have room for 50,000 gallons.
Right.
And I have yet to have to
Hit that.
shut them off.
Okay.
So that is the reason I feel that our numbers has been down. One, in general, everybody who comes in says they just don't have work. And two, there are some that are coming in now that say, well, your rate is the same as Milton and we're stopping in Milton. It makes sense. They don't have to drive the extra diesel out here. But so I felt comfortable going to the 500,000.
I remember at one point that company that sort of took over some other companies, I think it's Wells River,
Yep,
Wind River.
Wind River,
River.
they were bringing a lot
They took,
of
Yeah,
septic.
we don't
Are
see
they
them
still
very
coming
much
or not as
anymore.
much?
they took over.
They
already.
stop in
Yeah.
Montpelier quite a bit.
Yeah, they see him.
We've seen them a couple of times. Casella was bringing in one trailer truck of wash water from Avenue B a week, and they just started doing that last week, and they brought another one today. But yeah, Wind River would come in quite a lot. Right now, Working Dog and P&P are our biggest. And P&P is down, I would say, in February, P&P was down probably 75%.
Wow.
And they're like,
Is that
we just don't have any
normal? I feel like they were down in the winter last year too.
Well, yeah, the winter months tend to be lower, but it was really low this year for everybody. I
Barb?
mean,
Sorry, Barb.
Yep.
Well, a question and a comment. So when you say they just stop by Milton, I mean, Milton's north of Burlington, so it kind of depends on where they're coming from and where they're going to, doesn't it?
So Working Dog is based out of Fairfax.
Oh, there you
Oh.
go.
So and Working Dog is one of the last companies that still have farm fields that they spread all summer. So we do not see their business in the summer. We only see it in the winter months. And they're like, yeah, we stop in Milton till they're full and then we come here.
That makes sense. I mean, based in Fairfax.
Yeah.
My other question, this is maybe a longer topic for as we prepare for annual meeting. When I'm looking at row 4 here, I'm inclined to want to go back further for rows 4 and 5. I'm remembering some of the early history here where we were pretty cautious about septage receipts and not relying on it as a core revenue for infrastructure or staff. So that's just, I think, something we need to keep considering. What's it look like over time? Because that's a broader market. The sewage users are a captive market. The septage haulers are a more dynamic market, right?
Yep.
But I think it would be useful to look at those figures going back further in time, Josh.
Yeah.
Morgan. Because one of the things I note are budgeted for 25 for sewer user receipts is actually less than actual 22 or budgeted 23. I mean, so it's going up compared to the low point of 24. But, and I think on top of that, then we'd want to look, I think it's useful to be able to see the receipts, sewer receipts, septage receipts, and then user rates to see how those have co-varied over time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's a good point, Bart.
It'll be good information to have too when people come to us
Mhm.
about their increase in rates, to be able to
mean,
say this is.
I will tell you, 2019, 2020, 2021 were super big years for septage for you. Because Richmond was one of the only facilities taking during COVID.
And everybody was home, so they needed to have the tank
Yes.
pumped.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, but as I look at this, I'm questioning this.
I was kind of ignoring that one. I was looking at 373, 361.
That didn't make sense.
Yeah, because I feel like I need to look back at the
Maybe that's supposed
printed
to be a
fund.
3 instead of a 7.
Well, yeah, because the other double check on this is when you go down here, there should be a balance of 0 on the budget.
And there's 400.
So that means we were budgeting to raise 430,000 more dollars. So there's something funky here. I'm gonna highlight that in green and make sure that we figure out what's going on there. But yes, still your point of 23, we're at 361 and now we're down to 352. One thing to note too is in 24, do we use? Nope.
Yeah,
Well, that's when we went up to 550. Oh, yeah, so we increased by $50,000, right?
Yeah.
For septic receipts. And yeah, but when I first started here, we barely used septic receipts at all. And we had to fight Kendall to put more septic receipts in there. Well, because the concern was we didn't want to artificially hold down rates, and then if septic all of
Yeah.
a sudden dropped off the face of the earth the next year, we were gonna have to make that back up.
Right.
But we've proven over the years that septic, for the most part, aside from what Steve's experiencing now, has been fairly consistent and growing. So we've become more aggressive with them or more realistic, I'd say, over the last couple of years.
Steve,
And
do
really
you-
thinking what Aaron just commented, she's, I think, kind of on the same page to look at these trends over a somewhat longer period of time.
Yeah.
Because the 292 jumps out at you. 352 is a big jump from 292, but it's actually a reduction from 23. So
Yep.
I know last year we talked a lot about the septage rates and we raised them a little bit to be more competitive with other towns. Do you feel like that is causing us to have people not stop here?
I think there are some that, I don't think I think during the winter, when things were tight for a lot of the companies, it's loosening up now and we're seeing more of them come back. But during the winter, I think that, yeah, they were, if they, if they were in Shelburne, they dumped it in Shelburne versus bringing it to us.
Yeah, with our lower rates, it was worth their while to come here.
Correct.
Right.
Now I see them, if they're in the Milton area, they'll dump in Milton versus hold it
And coming back.
and coming back to us.
And kind of on that same point, we discussed too about measuring, was everybody being honest or are they just?
Yeah,
No. And at the end of the day, when you started taking those
Yeah.
measurements, it's a wash, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that we bill on the higher side than we take in. I'm still pretty confident on that.
Mm.
I haven't done specific truckloads, but I can do what we take in a day by what's in the tank. And we're pretty close to being almost always under what we're billing for.
So, but we still don't have this, we still haven't determined whether we're undercharged or we're not, we don't have a rate that really properly compensates us for the
Right.
cost.
Yeah.
Just some comments.
Yep.
there.
While we look at this, one way, if we decide we don't want to raise septic receipts in sewer, we actually have a good amount of unrestricted funds. So I just did the 15% calculation here. That's 131 for the projected budget in FY 25. For sewer, right now, we ended FY 23 with $366,000. We do have $55,000 to still pay out of the December flood recovery. So that was mostly the sewer line. They got hung up with the branch. So it's $310,000, which gives us about $170,000 that we could use out of here and still be at 131. So even if we used 50 to get us closer to here, there is some unrestricted fund balance that we could use. David?
How much of that unrestricted balance are we planning to put toward the upgrade and other expected expenses?
Right.
That's a
That's
good,
the
that's a
other
good
thing.
next question. Yeah,
I mean,
Mhm.
I'd hate to save a nickel today and have it cost us a quarter tomorrow.
right. Yeah, I mean,
How things are going.
I think one thing we're gonna have to be conscious of is the most immediate thing that we want to probably try to pay out of reserves or somehow is the influent pump before we get into that larger upgrade. The larger upgrade, I mean, it's like a 15 million, give or take. So that's gonna be mostly bond. I don't know, that a couple $100,000 is really gonna help us there, but something to keep in mind as we look at what can we do without that bond.
Can we include things like the influent pump that we're having to put out for before the bond to be reimbursed when the bond goes?
We
in?
need to do that pump now, though, right?
Yeah, we need to do the pump sooner rather than later. That's a good, I don't know that the financing would work that way. We can ask the bond attorney, but typically you need to show a necessity for that bond, and you bought the thing a year before you got the bond vote. Probably isn't gonna mesh.
Even if we
You
get
don't
the
think
bond
we
vote
look
to pay-
necessitable?
What's that?
You don't think we look like a necessity?
Well, we need a necessity to borrow the money.
Okay.
Not, and if we paid for it and it's been sitting there for a year,
Right.
paid for, the bond bank's gonna say,
No.
Can you
not really.
reimburse us for that pump we bought?
Yeah, I think
a
you're
year
gonna say-
ago?
These are questions to ask, because if we're getting principal forgiveness, it doesn't make sense to
Right.
spend what
Can
we
we-
have on
yep.
hand,
that's true too.
when we could be getting
Right.
If we can get a
forgiveness
50%,
on it.
yeah.
through that financing. So those are questions to ask.
Yeah. That's probably a good question for Hoyle Tanner. They might have a way to work
Yeah.
with that too.
Mm.
Bard?
I think that's the last point is probably the most compelling is how advantageous or disadvantageous will the bond be? So if it's positive interest and no capital forgiveness, it'll be expensive. But if it's negative interest and or, capital, like, grant funds, a way of reducing it, then it's good money. It's either bad money, better money, or worse money. But I'm also thinking of our experience since Steve has joined us, and it seems like there is this long list of things to repair. You turn over a rock, you find something. And in the scheme of things, 150 grand plus or minus is not big money for the kinds of equipment that we have to, repair or repurchase. So I'm a little cautious, not just about the 20-year plan and the bond, but what do we do? What other things are going to be broken or require repair or replacement between now and then? And so I'm a little reluctant, I appreciate the point about how much money do we want that's unrestricted, but given that, our recent experience, we might want to put more into these reserves, given the kinds of expenses that we're running into. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, and one thing we didn't update for this meeting was last year, we had that long list of items in water and wastewater that we knew we needed to get to in the next couple of years. I think we've gotten through a lot of that, and some of that
Yeah, I
is absorbed
mean-
into the 20-year plan. But for the next meeting, we can take a better look at that to give us a better idea of in next year's budget, what do we absolutely have to address before the 20-year
There
plan?
are things that are occurring on a regular basis at the plant and at the water system that are really, they're regular maintenance things, but because they have been put on hold, they become a major
Right.
issue.
Replacement, right?
The other night, I don't even remember, was it Thursday or Friday night?
Oh, Thursday
You
night, when
called-
the light was on, yeah.
So I just got home 5 o'clock and actually Kendall called me. Said he
Well, that's
drove,
not good.
he said he drove through Richmond and the red light was blinking. So I came back down to the pump station. It was not blinking and I was a little pissed. But then at 8:30, Josh called me or texted me, hey, my wife just came through Richmond and the red light's on the pump station. So I came back down and went through everything again. There were no alarms, no anything. And so and I watched the pump cycle and everything and that was fine. So I went home and it was good till morning. And then we got here on Friday morning, it was Thursday night, and Friday morning, popped the hatch on the pump station, went down in because we're now confined space drained. We don't have to depend on anybody else to do that for us. We went down in there, I found two issues. One, there are two GCI ground fault,
GFCIs.
yeah, down there. One is supposed to have the sub pump plugged into it. The other has got a dehumidifier plugged into it. They both were plugged into the same plug-in. And none of the GCIs were working. And
Okay.
it was not, the breaker was bad, it was they were bad.
Right.
So, and we also found out that the sub pump that was in there was pumping more, it was pumping out to the manhole, but it was also pumping it, bypassing itself. It had a crack in it.
Oh, okay.
So we replaced the sub pump, we replaced both of the outlets. And we did that in-house and it's been fine since.
I just out of curiosity, are those like industrial GFCIs that cost, I know the one.
They are not, they are 20 amp, and I asked Dan Pratt, I said, I asked him, are they're just regular outlets, I shut the breaker off, I can change them, right? And
Mhm.
he's like, yeah, if you can handle that, you change them.
Okay,
So
So
that, yeah, they're
minimal.
nothing.
Yeah.
The other problem was they're supposed to be in a waterproof housing. They were not. And I haven't gotten back down in there to put a new cover on the top of them, but
okay.
they had just a plain cover stuck over the top and it wasn't even screwed on.
Hmm.
So there are little things like that that arise. The other thing is the chain in the clarifier we had to order, because the drive chain for the clarifier finally wore out. But there are those little things that keep arising that
It's a little surprise every day.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Didn't we hire an electrician to put that all back together after it was flooded,
The what?
the pump station?
We had an electrician come check it.
Oh,
And they didn't.
And they didn't even actually go down in there. Everything was good up above. It was mostly the control panel that we were worried about.
okay.
But and it's been years since anybody from Richmond had actually been down in there.
Cause you have to get certified to go in, right?
Yes.
I've been in.
You have? Oh, are you combined?
So-
Out of curiosity, Steve, I'm sure we have a lot of other GFCIs at the plant. Once in a while, you should inspect them to make sure they're all working.
Yes.
Last time we did that plant wide.
You'd
that part of the
be
20 year?
surprised. There are very few at the water plant.
Oh. Huh.
But
Probably
it's
should.
water.
I think there are some that should probably be that, but they're not.
Okay, well, that
Um,
was another
Anything
item
within
for
6
the,
feet of
But
water.
it's a deal that, when we have an electrician there to do something, I should ask him, hey,
Yeah.
these do they need to be, or,
yeah, at that point, it's not just nice to have, it's a safety issue. People get electrocuted. and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Anything within 6 feet of water pipes or the ground.
yeah,
So while we're on this sheet.
Yeah.
One item to note here on the wastewater capital, this is the amount we spent so far is for the press deposit plus 20-year study and grit cleaning. We were gonna get $56,000 back from the state on the 20-year study for the engineering, so we've paid the full amount, so we'll get 56,000 back of what we paid. And then this is the balance that's committed for the press repairs. So that takes our 495 balance to 252 after the ins and the outs over the year. And then the unrestricted here, yeah, we talked about that was the flood. So other than that, there's really no other use of the long-term capital funds.
Okay.
So, yeah, so just quick, that's unrestricted, no, that's restricted.
So this is
Wastewater.
wastewater capital, yeah,
That's
and
right.
then what we've used, so that's in that fund that we've charged that fund
Right.
specifically for. And then the unrestricted money was really the emergency repair from the flood.
Right. And then the other two short-term capital and collection systems.
Yeah, so short-term capital, and Steve's working on updating this, but that's actually supposed to tie back to a list of short-term, smaller capital items that we have in the plant. And that's helpful or necessary when we get to like DWSRF loans and CWSRF loans. They look to make sure you've got a reserve
Oh.
that you're replacing those as part of your financial plan. That list of items hasn't really been updated with cost recently. So Steve's looking at that to make sure that we're good there and understanding the percentage we're supposed to keep on hand. And then the collection system is for anything that's sort of the piping leading to the plant. And we've had no major repairs on that this year.
So in order to borrow money, we have to have so much.
You have to show that you're planning and keeping up with those repairs, yes.
The collection system one, if you go back to the 20-year upgrade, they did an extensive evaluation of the manholes and everything, and that's where when they said, you know, you need to clean these, are top priority, they need to be cleaned out, they've got grease or debris in them.
Mhm.
That's where I anticipate using some of that money next year, in cleaning of the collection system, because it needs to be done.
And we did get some free cleaning of the collection system. after
Yeah,
the
we
flood
got a
from the
lot of
state.
free cleaning
So
from the
it's
state.
probably cleaner than it's ever been.
Yeah, I mean, the line running to the plant is probably as unobstructed as it has been since it was new.
Right? Okay, more
Is
questions?
it like-
One thing that we did, if you go back up to the budget items,
Wanted to go back there.
if you scroll down, if you notice, there's the,
Or down, where are we going?
yeah, we changed the things the same as we did have them in. But if you look at the, where's the chemicals, right? Yeah, so if you look at the biosolids chemicals, that's our polymer use.
Mhm.
I really don't I couldn't fathom why it was so high. So if you look at that one is 69 was the actual, you had budgeted 90. And then this year you budgeted 98. We're gonna be way below that. Part of that is, the fact that we're using totes now, so it's cheaper and it's cheaper for delivery. And so I took the last 2 years' chemical usage for biosolids, polymer, and I averaged them together, and then I added about 15%. And that's where I came up with the $70,000 budget.
Okay,
It's roughly $28,000 reduced from the year before.
And so I'll just, and then it looks like, with the rate increases with, Chittenden and Solid Waste District, it's not quite as bad as we thought it was gonna be.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Okay,
Were we using more polymer at one point before we fixed something?
Mhm.
I remember talking about.
it's hard to say.
Often.
I mean, we have really changed how we're using polymer now. We roughly are using about, I mean, it worked out to be 14 totes. And that worked out to be roughly the same number of barrels. But for one thing, when we use a tote, we end up with like 5 gallons of polymer that just doesn't come out.
Mhm.
You were in a 55-gallon drum system, you were running about 4 gallons of polymer per 55-gallon drum that didn't come out.
So percentage wise,
So you're saving, plus the cost for getting a tote is a lot cheaper. And the amount of handling that the staff has to do for polymer is almost nothing now. We went from handling 4 or 5 physical buckets a day
Mhm.
to, once every 3 months.
I assume that the totes are like those white things with the
Yep.
cage around them
Yep.
that have the valve at the bottom.
What gallon size are we using?
275.
275, okay.
Yep. It's roughly, so when we order, we used to order 8 barrels. Now we order 2 totes and so the shipping cost is less
Mhm.
because it's basically you're getting 10 barrels
That'd be-
every time you.
So at any given
Mm.
time, we've got one ready to go and one that's being emptied, or?
So what we do is we order 2 at a time.
Mhm.
And we have 1 tote that is now permanent. And we actually just keep filling that tote once
Got it.
every
Mm.
couple of months we fill it.
But you're cutting way down on delivery costs, right?
Yeah, we cut down on delivery costs, we've cut down on the price of the chemical. And I guess in a way, we've cut down on use because, with 8 barrels, you were gonna have 20 gallons of it that was waste because you couldn't get it out of the barrel.
Mm.
And then you ended up with the barrels all stacked up all over the plant
But
and we
isn't
don't
that-
have any.
Isn't that when you were cutting the tops off?
Yeah, we cut the
And
tops
you were-
off
You were
and
still
then you have
pouring
those-
it and you were still using it, right?
We tried, but a lot of the barrels had been there and it had frozen and it wasn't
There
usable.
really was a lot of
So
waste.
it was costing us not only to get rid of the polymer
Mm.
and get rid of the barrels. It was a mess. This system is,
Totes work
Way
better.
better.
yeah,
I
this
think-
system is way
I
better.
think what Erin's memory, because when she said that, it jogged my memory, was when we were having so much trouble with the press and you were trying to get the run clear, you had the polymer rep come out and adjust it.
Yeah.
Say, oh, actually, you can use less of my polymer.
Yeah.
I remember
and-
that, you said
and
you
he
listened
did
to
say
press,
that
yeah.
and,
So maybe we're still using.
I didn't
less.
remember the exact thing.
Yeah.
No, that got.
He
oh,
did,
oh,
he did
yeah.
say that, and we did adjust it. One thing I will say is going through, the press parts that are coming, from Fournier. One thing that arose was I had some questions about flow meters. They had 2 flow meters listed there. One for the sludge and then one for polymer. And so I asked them in a video conference, how come we have a flow meter for polymer? We don't have one now. And they're like, yeah, you do. And I'm like, no, we don't. No, we don't. And they're like, well, then that makes no sense because you have no way to control how much polymer is going into. So essentially their system, the way Richmond has been running it, you can turn their polymer dial, but because that polymer dial doesn't relate to anything, it doesn't know what it's doing. We've been running it basically on a,
Continuous basis.
yeah,
So it would tie into a piece of equipment when that's on, then
it would set a flow, it's flow based.
right.
And you're supposed to, so the flow of your sludge in, and you're supposed to be able to set the polymer to come in at another flow-based rate. There is no, and I cannot see where there ever was a flow meter for the polymer system.
20-year redo.
Yeah. I mean, they were baffled by it. I mean, the rep that had come and looked, he's like, yeah, I remember seeing one. And I went out with my my phone and my camera and I'm like, you show me where. He's like, no, and there's not even a broken pipe, like it. So. So going forward, our polymer use might come down even again, but I'm not making any,
I think most of the other changes that we know were sort of some of
Yeah.
the wording.
Wording
changes
was
we could-
mostly.
We could go through if you like. I think the only other thing to maybe note on the money side is we, for now, have flatline contributions to wastewater capital, short-term reserve and collection system. Kind of kept them the same with last year with the idea that there's probably some things still coming up in the future that we need to attend to.
Okay.
Okay.
So, we could go through the verbiage changes if you wanted
They're
to.
all in the memo.
They're all, yeah, and they're all sort of
They're pretty
highlighted
much
for
the
people to
the
see.
same as in water.
Yeah,
It was just, it was just trying to make it more transparent for people who are looking at the budget. Well, what is contract work? To me, that sounds like we hired a contractor to come in and do something.
Mhm.
It's not. It was a line that was made for the testing that we are mandatory from the state, so we've got to do it, but we don't have a contract with anybody. We can go to whoever's cheaper. We just use Endine.
so I think for the next budget meeting, which would be 2 weeks from today, if you want to continue to go with the regular schedule, we'll look at a deeper history of septic receipts and, budgeted users receipts over time. To kind of get a sense of where we're at with that. We'll also look back at that to-do list and add some costs to that, Steve, so we can see like, okay, what do you realistically want to get to in the next fiscal year to make sure we budget for that? What's going to tie back to the 20-year study? Those are the things that are on my list. We probably won't have rates by then just because we won't have usage until really, it would be the April meeting. I mean, we could do it based on,
Done.
yeah, we wouldn't have it because and I'm out next Thursday, Friday, so we certainly won't have the end of March by then. So that would probably have to wait until the April 15th meeting.
16, yeah, 15.
Tax day.
I mean, again, I could give sort of a rough idea on rates based on current usage, if that's helpful. I may not put it in the packet because I don't want to be like held to it. But we can look at that. And actually, if you wanted to, so I guess before we leave this part of the agenda, is there anything else that the commission would like to see for 2 weeks from today on the budget?
No,
Okay, and then would you like to look at where the rates would be if usage was exactly the same, or is that not helpful? You want to take a
Sure.
look? Okay.
that would be good. That is helpful.
Yeah.
Right now, the big question is how much money can we take from the unrestricted
Right,
to reduce rates, because we don't know how much things are gonna cost.
yes, so we'll look at that.
Well,
This is,
I'm not sure that's the pressing question, though.
Okay,
You know, part of it, I don't think we should make a judgment about rates next year without looking at rates over history. We already know that sewer user revenues are up compared to last year, but flat over a 4-year period, right?
Mhm.
If it were a trend that was going up all the time and we had 5%, 10% increases, I'd think very strongly we should be moving money out of reserves and, trying to keep rates down. But I think we need to be thoughtful about what expenses we have and what we're facing. Recognizing the bond is different. And we've already pulled a lot of money out of reserves this year, if I remember what we just looked at.
Right.
So I think the use of the excess revenues, I think there are several things we could do with it. We could contemplate attenuating rates, contribute to the budget. We could contemplate putting it into the reserves because we're using them faster than we're replenishing them already, right?
At times, yes,
Yeah.
and certainly with the 20-year upgrade, if we have any money on hand, we might want to put some towards that.
I'll be honest. I'm thinking about between now and then. When are we going to start looking at actual construction on the 20-year upgrade?
It would be a couple of years.
So
yes,
between now
what
and
do we-
then, I'm just
Exactly.
going to suspect that we're going to run into something and we don't know what it is today, but it's going to be something.
Mhm.
I
That's
mean,
my caution about the excess revenues for this year.
For wastewater, my biggest fear is our free influent pump dies. And we're stuck using the 1972 one that works sometimes.
Mm,
that is worth.
That's why I feel the need to replace that with a pump that fits into the upgrade.
mhm.
Because the 20-year study, we talked about 3 pumps, right?
Right, but, so what we've asked Holt Tanner is to give us the,
Yeah, I heard something else.
what we need to replace the one,
wait, what?
That's not nice, yeah.
what?
Nothing,
Oh.
keep going.
Yeah, it just sounded, go on.
Oh, is to give us the sizing of the pump we could buy now, install it now, but then it would be maybe not used, but if we had to, it would be there.
Right,
And give us our redundancy back and the ability to run it if we needed to.
and those,
And then in the upgrade, that pump would be removed along with the other one and the new 3-system pump, which we already have one of those pumps. It would be installed in the new upgrade. It's like, it's the same thing as the press. The 2 channels that we bought, we can go on to a new press.
right,
We bought them now because we needed them.
right. Agreed.
So this,
Point guard.
this is keeping, so the part of this that'll change is this section here, where we look at gallons used over the last 12 months, as well as the number of users. We usually measure that from last April 1st through the end of this March. So this is, I've just kept this exactly the same as what we used last time. So that's also why I think everything's fairly uniform here. To look at this, so the water rates would go up by 3.8% across the board on this because usage stayed consistent. And sewer goes up 20.5% across the board again. But these will start to shift a bit as we look at actual usage and it changes. But that's fairly consistent with what we were seeing over on, here we were up 21% on sewer and 3.7% on water. So it right now it's running pretty much identical on the rates again, because we haven't changed rate usage in the last year. Oh, sorry.
Hey, Josh, could I ask you to go back to the other page you were just on, the other sheet? Can
Yes,
you
sir.
compare what 25 is to actual 23?
Oh, percentage wise? Yeah.
I mean, for these different rates.
Oh, you want to look at rates or you want to look at receipts?
Yes,
Yes, both. Yeah.
$12,000 more in 23.
Yeah, so that would then be, I think,
I mean, that's part of my point, at least for water here, is it's down and then up, but it's still 25 is less than 23. And then maybe do the same for wastewater or sewer.
am I doing this formula right? So actually we'd be down.
5%,
Yeah,
4.5%.
I gotta switch these. This is H. And then F. Oh,
And then what does sewer look like?
You're looking at the percentage,
Yeah.
on 23.
So that's water, right?
Yeah.
And then sewer. Yeah,
That's down.
in each case, they're down a little bit.
I mean,
Mhm.
so this is where I'm pondering this because it looks like a big increase, but that's 1 year to 1 year. If you look at it over time, so those are just revenues or receipts. And I think it's worth looking at rates over time as well to see what the actual impact is to go. This is only 2 years here, right?
Yeah, and I could look at rates. That would be FY 23 to FY 25. That's a little bit more of an involved Excel spreadsheet. But just to
Yeah.
take a look at, let's say residential metered cost, right? 13.05 in FY 25. Residential in FY 23 was finalized at 12.33. I think we also, we changed the percentage 30/70. No, that stayed the same.
We
So
did on the
We did on
commercial.
commercial and
Yeah, so there's commercial. Commercial was at 1212 in 25. In 23, it was at, okay, so all of these are going up a bit. Interesting. It was 4060. So that did get changed there. And then this was at 19 for school, although, So we have to dive in a little bit more to see why it looks like the rates.
If I remember, there was a one-time kind of school adjustment. Remember this, that the school wasn't using much water during COVID?
Mhm.
And I'm gonna guess, before we really settle on what this all looks like, we should be looking at updated usage figures for the school, because I'm gonna guess it's rebounded a bit.
Yeah, and that's, again, yeah, we don't have those updated figures. So yeah, rates are always more challenging to dig into
Yeah,
because there's variables there. So we have right now on the surface of it with water, it looks like it's gone up a bit. And also, this is per 1,000 gallons. So if usage has gone up, then you think the rates would go down,
Yes.
And,
but yeah, we'll go the opposite way.
and
So
what,
it takes me more time to wrap my head around what's going on here. Well, the sewer, so let's see, sewer went from 1805 in FY 23 for metered residential to 1797. So that one actually did go down. And then it went from 1547. It only went up on commercial.
Commercial.
Yeah. But again, we've
adjusted.
we've
those
moved these
percentages.
around again, right? So
Yeah.
we've put, yeah.
That would be tough
But-
to track.
I think the sewer's really, yeah, the rates are really hard to, yeah, because there's so many variables. Sorry, Barb.
well, right. And the formula concept here is that each of these user groups starts by paying its share. So when one user group goes up or down significantly, it impacts the other two. So that's where it's really hard to do the rates without getting current usage. And it would seem pretty clear to me that during COVID, both commercial and school went down, which meant that we were more reliant on residential, right?
Yeah, but didn't we do something with school during that year that where we used the previous year's usage for everybody?
I
when
think we
s-
did that for at least 1 year, and I don't want to like get stuck here on the rates, but I think to get the updated gallon usage and then see what it looks like, because that's the other variable. It's not just what are the expenses and what's the needed revenue, what's the relative allocation across the three types.
Which I think we'll be able to look at better at the April 16th meeting, 15th.
so the other monkey in the pot I will throw out there is the installation of the new water meters.
Hmm.
Some of your water meters have been in since the 70s.
And they could be hardly wrong.
Correct. And some people are going to say, hey, my water bill is now.
But it's
Well,
just as possible it could go in the other direction.
it could, yeah, but I
But-
mean, it,
Typically, they underread if they are
They-
failing.
yeah, as they fail, they
They don't
underread.
usually
And
overread, so it
and-
probably won't go in the other direction, I'm sorry to say.
I'm, the discussion with Noah, the Zenner rep, was, some of your meters are probably 25% off.
25?
Well,
Oh,
Yeah.
that's not gonna be good.
So I guess when that happens, we ask the customer if they want us to go back and bill for under usage.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
You don't get that. I mean, this is a reason why Champlain Water District and other towns every 25 years or 20 years change their water meters
Mm.
out
Yeah.
on a regular basis.
But the good thing about, I mean, the good and the bad of that is, okay, we have 25% more usage, but then the rate comes down, right?
Rate goes up. No. rate goes-
Eventually,
The rate will go down eventually,
Yeah,
yeah, so
and
this,
then it
like,
will
if
come
we got all new water meters in right now, then yes, this time next year when we're setting rates, it would go
It would go
down.
down.
But for that user who is being undercounted by 25%, they're gonna pay more in the next fiscal year, because all of a sudden they're using a lot more water on the same
Cumulative
rates.
costs are still X.
You're gonna hear from me.
On the water data, when we look at the water data from this year, how will the water that like got damaged in the flood affect that number? Or have we already, like the people that did the grievance, do do we like discount that extra water usage or will it not really change?
I don't think anybody,
I don't think anybody actually
People,
had that
it's like
adjusted.
100 gallons.
yeah.
We
it
did,
was
we did
minor.
grant them.
Yeah, it's still what has gone through, what's been metered,
So it wasn't a drastic amount of water.
not in the grand scheme of it. I mean, to that individual customer, it was certainly
absolutely.
influential, but to these numbers where we're
Yeah.
talking millions of
It won't
gallons.
be.
It was
it's-
minor.
It's not gonna be a lot.
Because we went right out and got meter readings
Yeah.
as soon as, and it was like, less than 30 days, so.
Yeah, okay.
Um,
I just didn't know.
All right. And then I think the only other thing on this is I know that there was still a few numbers that we were working on trying to
Yeah.
refine. So we'll make any of those changes in the next week and a half and update you guys in the next meeting as well. If we sharpen our pencil on something,
Okay.
then move on.
And so when do we think that we'll actually be able to set rates?
So when we do the meter reading at the end of March, then we'll have readings for the last 12 months. So
Okay.
we'll be able to look at rates at the April 15th meeting. And then we don't actually set rates until the
May.
third week of May. So we'll have a couple of meetings to look at the budget, look at real rates, real usage, and then maneuver that. Yeah,
Really?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Does that segue us into setting the date for the water? and
I
sewer?
think it actually would, but I'll defer to the chair.
Yes, let's set the meeting for the,
Is it the third week in May? I thought it was the first week in May.
We typically do it the third week in May.
Okay.
Yeah.
make a point. Aaron, I will not be here April the 15th.
I will be.
Thank you.
I'm gonna put it in my calendar right now, though.
Thank you.
Big deal,
Tax
water
day.
and sewer meeting.
We'll have to face the horde of two people who are going to come to the meeting.
Mhm.
All right, moving forward here.
We'll say there could be refreshments, people swarm in.
Yeah.
So,
Probably have to host it.
so we want to set a date in May, right?
Yeah, typically at least in my last 6 years here, we've set it for the Tuesday after the second meeting in May, which would be May 21st. We'd have a regular meeting on the 20th and then come back for the annual meeting on the 21st. In years past, we've gone to the library. We've only ever, even pre-COVID, gotten maybe 4 or 5 people that showed up in person.
We had it here last year.
We did, and that's
Yeah.
because with Zoom, if anybody's interested, most people attend via Zoom. This room is more than adequate. And just behind the scenes within the library takes a few hours of staff time and MMCTV time. And if we're not gonna fill the room, I'd rather not.
Yeah. I don't see a
I think we
need.
haven't filled it in the last year.
We haven't filled it
Probably
in the
not
last
fill it
5 or
next
6
year.
years, yeah. So I think this
Well,
room,
Might.
this room with Zoom, I think is adequate for the attendance.
Okay, so May the 21st.
I move that we have the annual water meeting on May 21st, right here in this room at 6 o'clock.
Second,
I'll second that, David.
okay, discussion? All right, no discussion, calling for a vote on setting the annual water and sewer meeting for May the 21st at 6 p.m.
Jay, I.
Aaron, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
Morgan, I motion passed. Thank you. Okay, next up, review of list of water and wastewater items to be repaired or replaced. Steve?
We're just flying along right now. It's really getting busy for us. And I'm beginning to think we might want to take on the 4th employee.
Yeah.
Along with putting out whatever fire arises, we have started up on Tilden doing our curb stop search. It is very sad. Brad and I went up on Friday afternoon last week, in nice weather. We located 6 curb stops. 3 of them you could not get a wrench on to turn.
That's not good, right?
No, because if those were, it wasn't Bart's, but if they were Bart's neighbors had an issue, we have to shut the whole main off
Right.
in order to stop the water from going to their house. So, and that's why we're doing this. That's
Right.
why we're going out, checking the assets and making sure we can get on them. Plus, we have we're taking measurements off of the houses, putting it all in a collection of data so we know where somebody's curb stop is. And we're producing a very quick list of ones that need to get changed, essentially, if we can't get on them any other way. Along with that, we had some issues I told you about the pump station. We're dealing with those. The plant right now is all about the press. We've got the Fournier parts. They came in on Friday. They were damaged when they came.
FedEx?
No, a private carrier. I immediately sent pictures to Fournier and they have already sent the replacement parts. They did not want to, but they did. I told them we weren't paying for junk. And so they did send us the replacement air valves and stuff. It was obvious they were damaged in transit. There was nothing that could, we did once we got them here. We looked them over as soon as I took them off the truck. They are going to be here tomorrow to assist on putting the channels on. They anticipate a day and a half. Yeah, the press is supposed to be up and running again by Thursday, hopefully. I hope by Wednesday afternoon. And we will be able to take as much septage as we can, and which is basically what we're trying to do now. It is really amazing with all of the problems our plant has. If you saw the water we take in and the water that we pump to the river, it is truly amazing. Nate, our contract operator, is like, this plant produces some of the cleanest effluent that I've seen. When we take our daily samples, he looks at them. He's like, this plant is operating for all of its problems really, really, really well. And we really don't want to break that. So, and on the water end, things are plugging along. We had a meeting with the Zenner rep, finalized all of the meters and stuff for that. I'm not sure if they're actually ordered.
Right, they're ordered.
Yeah.
We
So-
signed the paper.
so those,
They should be coming soon.
Had a lot of feedback on companies to do the installs. Some of the installs we're gonna handle in-house. And then, the other installs we're subbing out. One of the companies out of New Hampshire, is actually have rented an Airbnb in Richmond because they have contract work with Shelburne, 2,500 meters, and another 2,500 meters with Colchester. But because Richmond is right near the interstate, they rented an Airbnb on Jericho Road.
Right, and they're bidding on this.
They're bidding on this, yep, they've asked
Great,
several questions, and the guy's like, we're staying right in Richmond, we really want to do this job. So they've asked lots of questions and stuff. But
so that's
yeah.
those are due Monday.
Yeah.
So we should be able to have that recommendation prepared by April 1st for the commission. And then we'll know that number for the budget too.
For the installers.
yeah,
Okay, good. All right, good. Well, just note that you pretty soon will be down to one page of things that you have to fix.
I wish. We have switched and are now using our inline pH meter at the water house. So your March data will show two pHs because we continued to monitor it for about 2 weeks. And then we're routinely checking about once a week with the old system. We were comfortable in switching. It was within a 0.01 variant, so we felt pretty comfortable. Like the new pH meter is in and we walk into the water house, we know exactly what the pH is in the
Right,
system now.
okay,
And that hasn't been working since before I was employed here.
okay. All right, thank you. Gateway project.
Yay.
So, Josh, Steve and I met, last week? Last week and discussed moving forward. And as we discussed in previous meetings, we need to set a meeting, or have you just talked with anybody over at the school yet?
So I'm trying to set a meeting up this week with John Alberghini.
Okay,
I can invite you guys if you like when I get a time,
I mean-
or I can just talk with him. Okay, I'll let you know.
yeah, that'd be good. And we discussed as before is one easement. And trying to get that sussed out first, approval for that, and then two, how to determine whether that line needs to be replaced. Bart?
I just wanted to point out two things. One, when we talked about this several years ago, there was some evidence that the school giving something to the town like an easement was a potentially big deal in terms of process. So I think we just might be prepared for whatever arises, whatever they say that they have to do. The other thing I'll say is that I think the select board got an email from one of the residents in the Gateway saying, this came up earlier, but I just thought I'd mention it because it came up again. Why don't we use ARPA funds to pay to put water and sewer lines down to the Gateway? So I think that my belief is understanding that ship has long since sailed, but I thought I'd at least raise it.
Steve?
I believe the easement that we discussed is the water line easement that never got finalized. We agreed to take over the water line but it never was finally or put in writing, right?
Right, yeah, so we've got
And
the MOU.
That's what we're discussing
But
getting that final.
yeah, I think though, to Bart's point, because our attorney brought it up, I think in the last 6 months about a larger easement. Even that easement might require the school to go to the voters
Okay.
to say, okay, you've got this water line here, it's the town's, but they need the easement over that. But we'll have to see what Alberghini and his attorney say.
But we have already assumed,
We own it, yeah. I think right
Responsibility
now, if
for it,
something
too.
broke, we'd have to like just work with the school to say, hey, we need to go in there to fix our water line. Here's the MOU.
Yeah.
I don't see why they wouldn't let us fix our water
No.
line. But having the formal easement in place could be, as Bart said, a bit more of a process than just me and John Alberghini signing something and moving.
right, but
Or the
I mean,
school board of the commission. But yeah.
I
we
think
have
it was
a
dropped on our end as far as not getting it
Finalized with the MOU.
finalized and giving it to the school to do whatever they need.
I think you're right. Yep.
Right.
So we'll follow up on that to try to housekeep that portion of it.
And then we will attack the sewer line issue.
Right.
Well, yeah.
Well, and I think the other part was clarification of what it would take to get an easement all the way back to the Richmond, the property, that easement down to the Reeves property.
Yeah. And I think the only other thing that I want to make sure we talk to the commission about is I had a meeting with Christy Farnham and Andrea Smith from NBRC regarding the status of the grant. And that came about because they emailed saying, any movement on the project? I said, we should probably talk rather than just email back and forth. So I brought them up to speed on, where we're at. They've given us 2 extensions over the last 2 years, one every year, last fall and the fall prior to that. So they said there's really no statutory drop dead on extensions. They can continue to give extensions, but they continue to have to go back to the federal loan, federal grantors to get those approved. They need sort of justifications as to why we continue to need extensions. The other thing is that, and they said in the grand scheme of things, this loan isn't huge money for them. They have others that are multi-million dollars. So this isn't a huge burden on them. But they said that if we wanted another NBRC loan, like say, for instance, for something for this building or anything else in town, the current one that we have has to be at least 75% spent. So it sort of holds up the queue for other potential grants. They did talk to me about paths forward where, you know, if we really got moving on some of the planning and we needed some money for research or legal or easement acquisition, they could write us a partial notice to proceed, which would say, okay, you can use some of this money to get going. I asked, in the worst case scenario, we spend X amount of dollars on that and then the project dies. They said they really wouldn't claw back money that's already spent. They would say, all right, you spent whatever, 20 grand on that, and it's done. It might reflect poorly on us as we apply again in the future. But just wanted to at least bring that to the commission's attention. I know we're all trying to work on this project and it's been years. But that's the update that I have from them and that I gave to them.
Questions, comments? Yes, we need to spend that money.
Yeah, the Reeves would love us to, and others in the gateway, not just the Reeves. I shouldn't say just the Reeves, because there's others in the gateway that would benefit.
I
mean,
thought they said they don't want,
So what they said right now, that they have no plans to install it because they needed to do something that generated income for their
Right.
property. So what they're gonna right now, and maybe I'm speaking out of, turn here for them, but I think they're gonna do something like storage.
right, that's what they got.
Right.
approval for.
But they still have, they're still looking at additional sources of revenue, which could be, some type of buildings, whether they're residential or commercial, that would need water and sewer. And so I guess the question is, and Bart has brought up this point before, is can they do something on site that makes it economic sense or not? And of course, I think the town would like, if we can make this work economically, would like to see this get down to somewhere on their property. So if something opened up in the future, all the way down Route 2, we've already got it that far down. But we have to align the economic stars to make this, or planets to make this happen.
I think that's fair.
The only thing I'd add is there's at least one property owner that has gone on record saying they don't want it.
Right.
There are multiple property owners who say they do want it. None of them have yet said they're willing to pay anything close to the amount of money that would be required for them to pay for it. So that's why it keeps sort of spinning. Somebody somewhere. The only thing that is potentially viable is maybe some kind of TIF district, where it's tax incremental financing, that if your tax goes up, you pay the cost of this infrastructure. That's a big deal project to even stand that up. And the idea, of course, is the only way that works is they replace what's there with things of higher value, and the increase in property tax valuation helps to offset the cost of infrastructure.
It would have been hard to do a TIF out there. Micro TIF
Right.
was
Yeah.
proposed, voted down at the state level, wasn't it?
Yeah, it might have been. I didn't follow it to its
Yeah,
conclusion.
it made no sense to me that they voted it down, because what did it hurt?
I
You know,
don't know.
TIF is usually used by places
Yeah.
like Rutland, and we're not Rutland, so.
Yeah.
I think the issues were, number one, scale, and number two, there has been concern forever about sprawl, Miracle Mile along there. So that the real issue there is what zoning would allow or not allow. And it's not that big a space either, right? It's not like 100 acres.
Trump Towers.
I mean, we've
Divided
updated,
apart,
the
so-
zoning has been updated for that district, and it would not allow sprawl, but,
I mean, essentially one whole side of the road, right?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Is off limits.
Yeah.
And, there are customers out there that have gone other means by
under the
now,
highway, yeah.
and we're losing the ability to
Economic.
economically go out there because they don't need it now.
Right.
Yeah, and it seems like there's gonna be 6 houses that have to pay for it, and
Well, it would only make.
How is that gonna
Right.
make any sense?
Right. Even if we'd taken 50% of the ARPA money back before we spent any of it, it would not have made it economical, in my opinion. I think the whole idea was based on the idea that we could use existing reserves to pay for a project. And when we found out that no, you cannot basically take money from previous customers to expand service to new customers, we're like, crap. Well, that shoots down the whole idea. And we've been trying ever since then to scrounge under the sofa cushions to find some way to make it work.
Figure out a way to make it work. So,
Absent a really generous grant, I'm
In the future,
Mhm.
is it possible that your septic revenue could be used?
We explored that.
Yeah, and no?
We can't use septic revenue to subsidize,
It's a restricted fund.
you
Okay.
know, operations.
It's even sort of worse because what we have kind of set in stone is expansion of the system is paid for by the new customer.
Right.
And so either they pay for it or we get free money. Or we change the rule. And I don't think existing customers with our current rates are enthusiastic about paying more to subsidize new additional customers. That's what we've run into.
Right.
Rod is unmuted and visualized.
I see. Rod, do you have a question?
Steve asked my question, actually, since septage revenue isn't actually generated by the users, I was curious whether that money was out from underneath the understood restriction of using reserves that were generated by users. But if that's the case, that's the case. I would still like to make the case that if we could get by hook or by crook and whatever leftover ARPA money there might be to get the fire water down onto Reeps and a pump station down at Reeps, then any additional users could be responsible for running their own lines to that pump station and done in a private way. That gets us away from having to worry about the one user that thinks that they don't want to be hooked on. They're absolutely willing to have an easement to go across their property for other people to hook on. And given the fact that probably all the properties out there have systems that are questionable, and the current state of cost to replace your system with something that works in soils like that is about $50,000 per property. I think there's more than enough money to pull lines privately pulled, perhaps to be taken over by the town after they're installed. But that gets us away from the big problem that we had before of trying to figure out a tax. I forget what it was called, Josh, maybe you remember, but figuring out how to pay all for that had to be based on either property size or something right at the outset and couldn't be adjusted later. If we could get that first nut taken care of, then a low pressure system running to a pump station winds up being a much simpler system, gets us out of the right of way. We don't have to work in the state right of way. Everybody's properties are required to be set back at least 30 feet from, I think of the new zoning, at least 30 feet back from the current right of way. There's plenty of room to have separation and lets us run small pipes. The big game changer was losing the mobile station, which seemed like a bad idea, but it was actually a great thing because the actual extra distance to get to the mobile station was killing the project. Trying to divide up that expense among a handful or say a dozen property owners was really making it very difficult. So while we lose a little bit of flow and a potential customer, it's a whole lot better. if at some point you want to run sewer lines out to the trailer park in some far-fetched fantasy, that would be big lines and you'd run them in the right of way. And go ahead and carry that on. Anyhow, yes, the REAPs are a little ambivalent right now. The last I talked to them, they are interested in putting in housing. One of the other properties, one of the duplexes is interested in putting in like an extra 10 units. I think Mumford's property next to me would easily go into 5 units. It is the housing solution area that the town, the county, the state is, you know, everybody's begging for. And I hope you all, I understand that a lot of that isn't the Water Sewer Commission's purview, but there are 3 of you that are on the select board. And I hope you all will look at that more as a town-wide situation rather than just a straight Water Sewer Commission purview. Thank you.
No, thank you, Rod. No, we'll continue to, as Josh said, we have a meeting set up with the school superintendent or representative to sort of sort out the next step as far as getting across that property and using those lines or not. So we will keep moving this forward.
I mean, the first real step is get through School Street and go from there.
And I would guess that we would need to look in, Rod made a suggestion of people being able to hook in on their own. But I would think we would need to talk to somebody about that. I don't think they could hook right into the pump station. I think legally we'd have to have them hooking into a line, right?
On Cochran Road, everybody has their own, towards the end of Cochran Road, everybody has their own pump station.
For sewer.
Okay.
And it pumps into our forced main, which dumps into a main up further.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean.
So it might be,
Yeah,
I know the main complication we've run into in the past was one private line cannot hook into another private line.
right, I guess
Right.
that's what I
that
was
can't
wondering.
happen, but if they were all willing to run
All the way.
all the way, I don't see why it wouldn't be accepted. You know, if they're putting a line into the pump station and your neighbor's running a line to the pump station, I don't see why that wouldn't be acceptable.
I think like Rod was
I would have to
Just
look. but-
describing there is if he ran lines to his property and then we took those lines over, then they would become the town's. And then the next, so you could,
So you could daisy chain, but we'd have to keep assuming ownership.
right.
I think it'd be simple enough to start an entity that was the entity that contracted. We've talked about doing a private extension, that you can't add a private extension onto a private extension. If you guys take over the school line, or as part of this process and using the Northern Borders grant, we take over the school line and get a town line down onto the REAPs property. We could certainly come up with a single entity that is a partnership between all the property owners that get out as far as the doggy daycare, and that entity would be responsible for the construction of the new lines and putting them in. We'd do water and sewer so that we'd be easily able for you to bill each one. And I would propose that we would do it to town specs. And when it was all done, we'd give it to the town. And thereby dissolve the private entity at a time when it's not inconvenient. Obviously, when it becomes a town's property, then that last holdout would have to hook on. And so I want to be sensitive to that.
All right. Great, thank you. Questions, comments?
Thanks.
The other wrinkle that I'd say we ran into is the expansion of the water sewer district.
Bard, you cut out. Could you say that again?
Expansion of the water and sewer district.
Only went up to the mobile station. The vote didn't go through to go beyond the mobile station.
Okay.
I don't
Okay.
understand. We already had the vote. The district's expanded, isn't it?
Yeah,
Out to the mobile station, yes.
Yeah, so I'm just pointing out, revisiting the history, because not all the people in that room were here for all of that history. The history goes back now, what, 8 or 10 years, something like that.
Yeah.
At least.
When this started.
I didn't even, did I even live in Richmond then? No.
Yes,
Yes,
so
I
that's in place, yeah. Okay, update when change to water supply rule.
So this is a state thing. The water supply, and this goes back to the fluoride issue. The water supply rule still had a listing as 1.0 to 1.6 as the amount of fluoride you would have in a system. And the CDC recommendations were a 0.6 to a 1.
Right.
The state had never updated their water supply rule to reflect
the feds.
the new ones. So they sent this letter out finally stating that they had done that.
Yeah, I think there was a letter issued to all fluoridated systems to
Yeah.
say, don't go by the 1 to 1.6, use the CDC rule. And that goes back some number of years when CDC lowered their levels. But I guess they only do these updates to the rule every few years.
Yeah.
So
I
they've
mean-
now made the update to the rule so that it's consistent with CDC. And it
Okay.
did cause some confusion a couple of years ago as we dug into fluoride, but nonetheless, we're now well within the range and very consistent thanks to Steve and his hard work on fluoride.
Right, thank you, Steve. Okay, review of information sheet related to sewer meters.
Sure, let me pull that
This
up.
is Josh's.
Passing it along.
Make sure you ask tough questions.
So this follows back up to,
Why don't we meter sewer?
why don't we meter sewer? So I put together a fairly short statement that could come from the commission based on what we've looked into over the last several months, which basically says, we set a metered and fixed rate. Bard's got a question. We'll just go right to questions you can all read. And read through while Bard asks his question. I don't need to read to you.
I thought we might make this a little stronger. Are we aware of any system anywhere that has both water and sewer meters on the same property?
No.
So, I mean, that's my point for people who are not water sewer geeks or professionals. You wouldn't know this, but my understanding is nobody does this. The only time anybody meters sewage is if they really have to for some reason. Right? That's my understanding.
I mean,
If you didn't use water, then, but you
Yeah.
were adding sewer, then.
I would argue you could add to the last sentence or somewhere also that the to meter sewer is more challenging because it is there are, like, I don't know how you say it right, but like there's solids, there's things that go
Yeah,
through it.
solid.
It makes it that more complicated. And because I do think to your
Uh-oh.
point, like a layperson reading this might not understand that like
I think,
what flows through the sewer doesn't come out as nice and uniform as what goes into their faucets.
right. I think a lot of this
Thanks.
is a result of the wording that was used originally. It was metered water
And metered sewer.
and metered sewer. Well, it's not.
Metered
And
water.
and that's where it lies in people's questioning, what's the sewer meters, it is a sewer rate based on water flow
Mhm.
is more the wording that should have been used.
Mhm.
So I don't. in transparency, I believe that's where the real issue lies, that you know, the wording should change there too,
Right.
to reflect that we do not meter sewage.
Mhm.
It is based totally on your water flow. And as a percentage of that as
You could say sewer usage, like.
Yeah.
you know,
sewer usage is
Yeah.
based on,
And then the blurb why.
You get your fixed rate and your usage rate.
yeah,
To keep
well,
it
yeah.
succinct,
Yeah.
like you're saying.
Yes.
I think we have a chance to do that at the annual meeting. As we're setting rates, we can set the verbiage there. I can change this to say, rather than the process is consistent with many other, I can say that the process is consistent with every other water and sewer system that we researched,
Mhm.
to say that that's it. And I can add in about metering sewer is challenging and inaccurate due to solids. And
Well, it's cost ineffective. There is,
Yeah, if you want to pay $20,000 for a sewer meter, knock yourself out.
there
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
no
you can
sewer
just
meter out there that works 100% of the time.
and they're more expensive than water meters too, if you put them in, right?
I've never even seen
Never
one.
even seen one. I'm not even gonna.
Probably
talk
some
about
sort
it.
of,
Well, they're
ultrasound.
They're ultrasonic.
And
Yeah.
if you have to have one, you probably get it.
Yeah.
Like if
They're
if we
like-
expanded to the reefs and we had, and all it was
Yeah.
was sewer, we would have to monitor the sewer somewhere. And we talked about that is
Yeah.
we would monitor their water, we would meter a sewer, we do a
It
double
goes
check.
back
There was a
to,
whole
there
process.
was one here in Richmond years ago for the cheese factory.
Oh, yeah.
They had their own line coming into the system that had a meter on it. But back then it was it basically was just like a water wheel that turned.
Color?
Yeah, kind of that metered at so many turns, it was this.
All right, so I can make a couple changes and bring that back to the next meeting if that is good.
Sounds good.
Mhm.
We should actually talk about, well,
Alright.
we'll get to there.
And next,
Oh, sorry, so we went to sewer meters at about 1:42, and now we're at the Tilden. Okay, yeah, that's a quick update. So we did get an email at the end of the last week from the state, which I initially thought was really good news, but then I read it closer and it was just an email saying that they have received our application for the loan, which we sent them almost a year ago now.
Mhm.
So
They just-
reading.
Federal Express?
Well, the state is.
That's two Federal Express
They
jokes.
don't have a post
So
office.
now they're asking for a few other follow-ups, like,
Of course they are.
there's some stuff I gotta get together with Tyler to get them some extra stuff. But at least they're actively looking at it, which is good. But at this point, getting into construction this summer is doubtful because if we went out to bid right now, I think prices would be very high as schedules are filling up. So
Mhm.
realistically, this is looking like a spring project, I think, for next year. And Pete's also getting
Liking
antsy
it,
about it because he wants to get Bridge Street paved.
Yeah.
So I told him, hopefully we can get it done in the spring and then we can pave and, he's trying to rearrange his paving schedule, but
Mhm.
that's where we're at right now.
Okay.
And
go
why-
easy down the end of Tilden Avenue, okay?
And while we have Pete up there, his guys spent a day over at the water plant today. And we trimmed all of the trees
Oh, nice.
back. And cut some dead ones on the park side that pieces were falling into the tanks. So I'd give them some kudos for spending a day and saving us a lot of money. We helped them, but they had the equipment and the manpower and came in and did it. And I'm just, working with them and helping us out. That's a big help. So,
Great, okay, thank you, Pete, Gosling and crew.
The
That's it?
road guys are pretty great.
So for
You
next,
guys are too.
next agenda, I've got budget, we'll update the letter on the meters, we'll review the to-do list. Maybe an update from Alberghini.
Can we talk about that damn tank?
Yeah,
And when the diver,
yeah, we just
yeah, I gotta get with Tyler.
gotta go with Tyler.
It's just I haven't had
I
time.
think the diver's been in though, right?
Oh, yeah, the divers have been in, but
We gotta get the video to Tyler.
the video is a mess.
That
It's
apparently
not
is going
just a
Federal
simple-
Express.
No, it's not just a simple, they have it on a website and
He didn't leave a ring around the tank, did he?
No.
Okay,
And then I guess my only other question on next meeting is, do we want to start at 5 o'clock again, knowing we're gonna go through the budget again?
I'm fine with
Does that
that.
work for everybody?
Yep.
Begrudgingly?
I love it.
Yes.
Yes, no, it's
I
fine.
mean, admittedly, I'll be in Bermuda, but I'm planning on dialing in.
Are you really?
Are you seeing-
Wear your short.
You should maybe not die.
No.
Don't
Don't forget to pack your short.
Well, yeah,
Okay. that's
And I
all.
need
Not
to-
anything.
Five's fine. I just might be 5 minutes late.
I'm sure that's. We can make it work.
Yeah, we tagged out at like 4:59, so I was a couple minutes late today.
I got you. I know those handoffs.
all right. Any other questions, comments, discussion? If not.
Morgan, this is David. I'll go.
Second,
Dale, second that.
a second, calling for a vote to adjourn the meeting.
Jay and I.
Aaron, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
Morgan, aye, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.